during a terrorist attack. I took a bullet for Ryan Page. After that, he felt obligated to marry me, but for 7 years, his eyes always looked through me, like I was a stranger. Then, his first love, Ashley White, returned to the country. Ryan and Ashley became the talk of the city, the perfect power couple. His friends joked, "Aren't you worried your wife might get jealous, spending so much time with Ashley?" Ryan would just shrug it off. "If it weren't for the debt I owe her, she'd just be the housekeeper's daughter." My heart has always belonged to Ashley. I didn't fight it. I didn't make a scene. I just left a divorce agreement on the table and disappeared. But then, Ryan turned the city upside down, searching for me. Ashley's back. The news hit me like a thunderbolt, shattering my thoughts. I pushed open the bedroom door and scanned the living room, empty. It was already 2 a.m. And Ryan still wasn't home. I grabbed my phone, and a trending headline flashed across the screen. Renowned violinist Ashley returns home after world tour. Greeted by Page Group president. Our wedding bells ringing. Below it was a photo of Ryan shielding Ashley from the crowd as they hurried into a black SUV. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her delicate frame tucked into his arms like a fragile bird. It was a picturesque scene, if the man in the photo wasn't my husband of 7 years. Panic and dread flooded my chest. I fought back tears, my hands trembling as I dialed Ryan's number. The ringing felt like a noose tightening around my heart. The call connected, but it wasn't Ryan's voice that answered. "Hello, can I help you?" The woman's tone was soft, almost sweet. My throat went dry. "Where's Ryan?" There was a pause, followed by the sound of footsteps and faint running water in the background. "He's in the shower." "Ryan, someone's calling you. Is it work-related? Tell them to call back tomorrow." Ryan's voice echoed, muffled by the water. "No, Ryan," the woman replied, her tone teasing. "Your caller's name is labeled as the housekeeper. The housekeeper." I couldn't bear to hear more. I ended the call, my phone slipping from my hand and clattering to the floor. I leaned against the wall, tears streaming down my face. Ryan and I had been married for 7 years. Yet, the moment Ashley returned, he rushed to her side, and my name in his phone, the housekeeper. I thought 7 years would be enough to warm his heart, but I was wrong. It was all just a foolish dream. I slid down the wall, my hands muffling the sobs that threatened to escape. I was the daughter of the Page family's housekeeper. I first saw Ryan in the garden, a handsome young man passing by the flowers I was trimming. From that moment, I was smitten, but I knew he was out of my league. I could only admire him from afar, burying my feelings deep inside. 7 years ago, Ryan and Ashley had a falling out. She left for abroad despite his protests, and on his way to the airport, he was caught in a terrorist attack. In a split second, I took a bullet for him. When I woke up in the hospital, he was there, dark circles under his eyes. His gaze was steady as he said, "Lisa, marry me." Overwhelmed with joy, I nodded without a second thought. I didn't see the emptiness in his eyes. After we married, Ryan remained distant, treating me more like a stranger than a wife. But I was young and hopeful, convinced that with time, I could break through to him. I poured my heart into caring for him, into being the perfect partner. Yet, all I got in return was being labeled as the housekeeper. I'm human too. I have feelings. And I'm tired. 7 years of unrequited love have worn me down. Ashley's return was the final blow. If his heart is a block of ice I can't melt, then I'm done trying. With a deep breath, I wiped my tears and started planning my exit. The next day, I went to the family estate to see Ryan's mother, Mia. She was seated at the table, dressed in an elegant dress, sipping tea. Another cup sat across from her. When she saw me, she glanced up with a cool expression. "I knew you'd come. That's your spot," she said, gesturing to the empty space where there was no chair. I stood there awkwardly. "Drink," she commanded. I picked up the teacup. The liquid was scalding hot, and my hands trembled from the pain. I forced myself to take a sip, the heat searing my mouth, but I didn't make a sound. Mia watched me with icy eyes, her gaze lingering on my puffy, tear-stained face. She smirked. "Lisa, I always told you that you and Ryan weren't a match." Mia had never approved of our marriage. I was the housekeeper's daughter, worlds apart from Ashley, who came from a family of scholars. But Ryan had insisted on marrying me, and I had been foolish enough to believe in us. Over the years, Mia had made my life hell. Ryan never stood up for me, only saying, "Mom really likes Ashley. You need to make her like you too." For his sake, I endured it all, burying every hurt deep inside. But now, I couldn't do it anymore. I want a divorce from Ryan, I said through gritted teeth, my hands numb from holding the scorching cup. Mia's eyes swept over me with disdain. Finally, she smiled. "It's about time you came to your senses. Set a time to sign the divorce papers with Ryan," she continued. "I'll give you some money. Take your mother and leave the city. The farther, the better." With that settled, I went to see my mom. Mia hadn't just tormented me, she'd made my mom's life miserable too. She blamed my mom for raising a girl who dared to seduce her son. When I found my mom, she was washing clothes in cold water. Her hands were raw and red, her lips pale. When she saw me, her face lit up. "Lisa, what are you doing here?" she asked, quickly hiding her chapped hands behind her back. "I'm fine. Don't worry about me," she added, forcing a smile. The sight of her broke me. Tears streamed down my face as I rushed to hug her, sobbing like a child. My mom froze for a moment, then gently patted my back. "It's okay, Lisa. Mom's here." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I held her hands and forced a smile. "Mom, I'm divorcing Ryan. In a few days. We're leaving. We'll go to the coast. Like you've always wanted." She looked at me, her eyes soft. She didn't ask questions, just pulled me into a warm embrace. "Okay, Lisa, wherever you want to go, we'll go." I checked the next available flights and booked tickets for 3 days later. After saying goodbye to my mom, I headed back to the house to pack my things. That I arrived at the villa and punched in the code, but the door wouldn't open. I called Ryan repeatedly, but he didn't answer. After shouting for what felt like forever, the door finally creaked open. My heart sank the moment I saw Ashley standing there, wearing the matching pajamas I bought for us. She looked me up and down with a smug expression, like she owned the place. "Oh, you must be Ms. Thompson," she said sweetly, "when Ryan brought me here." I asked why the code wasn't my birthday anymore. "He changed it right away. Didn't he tell you?" "My bad." A bitter ache rose in my chest, but I held it together, ignoring her jab. I walked past her into the living room. In the few hours I'd been gone, the villa had been transformed. The little trinkets and plants I'd carefully placed around the house were now in the trash. The cozy touches that made it feel like home were gone, replaced by a cold, sterile atmosphere. Ryan emerged from the bedroom, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on, Ashley? Who's here?" When he saw me, he froze. My eyes locked onto the matching pajamas he was wearing, the ones he'd always refused to wear, calling them too childish. "Ryan," I said, my voice trembling, "I thought you hated those pajamas." He avoided my gaze, his tone flat. "Ashley just got back, and she didn't have a place to stay. We're old friends, so I let her crash here for a bit." "Crash here?" I laughed bitterly, tears welling up. "You changed the code to her birthday. You redecorated the whole house. Ryan, this is our home. Or was it never really ours?" For a moment, guilt flickered in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by irritation. "It's just temporary. Why are you making such a big deal out of nothing?" Ashley stepped forward, linking her arm with Ryan's. "Yeah, Lisa, Ryan and I are history. You're being so dramatic." They spoke in tandem, making me feel like I was the one overreacting. But as I looked at the man I'd loved for 7 years, something inside me snapped. The pain in my chest was sharp and unrelenting, like 1,000 needles piercing my heart. Knowing I'd be leaving in 3 days, I didn't bother arguing. I walked past them to my room. Inside, Ashley's suitcases were piled high, and my belongings were nowhere to be seen. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my anger in check. "Where are my things?" I demanded. Ashley smiled sweetly from the doorway. "Oh, was that your stuff? I thought it was trash. I had it moved to the storage room." "Oops." Her tone was dripping with mockery. Ryan shot me a look, silently telling me to let it go. Disappointment washed over me. Without a word, I went to the storage room. My belongings were scattered everywhere, covered in dust. I carefully gathered them, one by one, and packed them into my suitcase. When I walked back out, Ryan called out, "Lisa, Ashley just got here. And we're exhausted. Make us dinner." I nodded silently and headed to the kitchen. I cooked a few simple dishes and brought them to the dining room. As I set the plates down, Ashley approached. "Here, let me help you with that," she said softly. Her fingers brushed against the plate, and I let go. But then, she tilted it toward me. The steaming hot food spilled all over me, scalding my arm. I gasped as my skin turned red and raw. "Oh no, Lisa, you're so clumsy. You burned my hand," Ashley cried, holding up her perfectly unharmed fingers. Ryan rushed over, gently inspecting her hand. When he saw the faintest hint of redness, he turned to me, his eyes blazing. "Can't you do anything right? You hurt Ashley." I looked down at my blistered arm, then back at him. Ryan avoided my gaze, his voice dripping with disdain. "What's the big deal? Ashley's hands are for playing the violin. You're used to this kind of work. Your skin's thick enough to handle a little burn." The sting on my arm was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. Ryan fussed over Ashley's hand, treating it like it was made of glass. I walked to the kitchen, running cold water over my burned skin to ease the pain. Once the food was on the table, I moved to sit down. But Ryan stopped me. "Ashley's not comfortable eating with strangers. You can eat after we're done," he said, piling food onto Ashley's plate. I stood to the side, watching them, my heart sinking with every passing moment. Ashley kept ordering me around, and the two of them treated me like I was nothing more than hired help. I tried to ignore their closeness, reminding myself that in 2 days, I'd be free. After dinner, they settled on the couch to watch TV. I didn't want to be part of their little world anymore, so I headed to the guest room to sleep. Ashley's voice stopped me. "Oh, Lisa, I noticed the guest room was a mess, so I washed all the bedding. You'll have to sleep in the storage room tonight." I looked at Ryan, hoping he'd say something, but he stayed silent, letting her banish me to the cramped, dusty space. The storage room was worse than the servants' quarters. Maybe, in his mind, I was even lower than that. I didn't argue, just crawled onto the tiny bed, curling up to fit. The walls were thin, and I could hear Ashley and Ryan laughing together. His voice was soft, tender, a tone he'd never used with me. Tears soaked my pillow as I drifted into a restless sleep. My heart shattered. The next morning, I woke up sore and stiff. Ryan and Ashley were already gone. I remembered I still had a job at Page Group. If I was going to leave, I needed to tie up all my loose ends. I took a cab to the office, resignation letter in hand. As soon as I walked in, I overheard my coworkers whispering, "That's the CEO's wife, right? They look so perfect together." I heard she just got promoted to director. She's definitely the future Mrs. Page. A famous violinist too. She's living the dream. I'm so jealous. I packed up my desk, tears silently falling. When I joined Page Group years ago, Ryan had insisted I start as a low-level employee, saying he didn't want to show favoritism. Even when I was bullied or mistreated, he never stood up for me. It wouldn't look good, he'd say. For 7 years, he'd never been on my side. Yet Ashley waltzed in and was immediately given the red carpet treatment. The difference between love and indifference couldn't have been clearer. I handed my resignation letter to HR and walked down the hallway, my arms full of belongings. That's when I saw Ashley standing there, a smug smile on her face. I tried to avoid her, but she stepped in front of me, her voice dripping with malice. "The real deal is here. Don't you think it's time you stepped aside? Replacement." She looked me up and down, her tone mocking. "Do you know what you look like right now? A drowned dog. Ryan's going to marry me. Do yourself a favor and disappear." Anger boiled inside me. So what? As long as I refuse to divorce him, you'll always be the shameless homewrecker. Dream on if you think you'll ever marry him. She laughed softly, her words cutting deeper. "You're just as cheap as your housekeeper mother." That was it. I couldn't let her insult my mom. I raised my hand and slapped her. She didn't dodge. Instead, She let out a dramatic cry and fell to the floor. A triumphant smile playing on her lips. What the hell is going on here? Ryan's voice roared behind me. Before I could react, he shoved me aside and scooped Ashley up from the floor, his eyes dark with fury. I knew I'd acted impulsively. I turned to leave, but Ryan grabbed my wrist, his grip crushing. Apologize. Now. His voice was loud, drawing the attention of everyone in the office. Ryan, it's okay. Lisa didn't mean it. She just doesn't like me, Ashley said, her face buried in his chest. But I could see the triumph in her eyes. Who do you think you are? Treating Ashley like this? Ryan's voice was cold, his anger palpable. He tightened his grip, and I winced as the pain shot through my wrist. The items I'd been holding scattered across the floor. The office staff gathered around, whispering, "Who does she think she is? Bullying the CEO's wife. Serves her right. Getting called out by Mr. Page. She's just jealous of Ashley. That's all." Humiliation burned my cheeks as tears streamed down my face. Ryan didn't let go, his grip unrelenting. I felt utterly defeated. Swallowing my pride, I bowed deeply to Ashley, my voice trembling. "I'm sorry." Ryan finally released me, and I scrambled to pick up my things. I bit my lip to hold back more tears and pushed through the crowd, fleeing the office. When I got home, I collapsed on the floor and sobbed, repeating to myself, "I don't want to love Ryan anymore." I must have cried myself to sleep because the next thing I knew, my phone was ringing. It was a friend, her voice urgent. "Lisa, what did you do? Check the news." I opened my phone and saw the trending headline. Shocking. Company employee attacks CEO's wife out of jealousy. Below it was a heavily edited video showing only my words. "You'll always be a shameless homewrecker. Dream on if you think you'll ever marry him." And then the clip of me slapping Ashley. Ashley had also posted a video. Tears in her eyes. "I don't know why Ms. Thompson has such a grudge against me, but Ryan and I truly love each other." The comments were brutal, all siding with Ashley and vilifying me, calling Ashley a homewrecker. This woman's delusional. Everyone knows they've been each other's first love. If Ashley doesn't marry Ryan, who will? This woman's disgusting. She should look in the mirror before speaking. I was there. She's insane. Harassing Mr. Page. Poor Ashley, getting slapped and still defending her. Ashley, marry Ryan soon and invite me to the wedding. Some even dug up photos of me and my mom, photoshopping them into obituaries. My phone was bombarded with calls from Ashley's fans, and my friends were being harassed too. I felt utterly helpless. I called Ryan, hoping for some support, but his voice was cold and dismissive. "About the online thing, just let it go, ignore it, and people will forget." He hung up before I could say more. I sank to the floor, covering my face with my hands. A bitter laugh escaped me. This was the man I'd loved for years. Just let it go. That had always been his answer. I was never his priority, just someone to endure endless humiliation. "Ryan, loving you is too painful. I don't want to love you anymore." I reached out to a colleague I trusted and got the full, unedited footage of the hallway incident. Then, I took a photo of our marriage certificate and scheduled a post with the video on social media. After that, I sent the divorce papers to Ryan's email. I called my mom, and we made plans to leave, disguised and cautious. We headed to the airport. As I boarded the plane, I threw my phone into the trash. Ryan sat in his office, his brow furrowed as he scrolled through the comments under the trending hashtag. The internet was ablaze with outrage. He thought of Lisa's trembling voice and her tear-streaked face. Yes, she'd acted impulsively, but Ashley had gone too far this time. After a moment of hesitation, he called his secretary. "Get Lisa to my office." There was a pause on the other end. "Sir, HR records show there's no one by that name." "What?" "Lisa from the planning department." "Look again," Ryan snapped. The secretary's voice was uncertain. "Mr. Page, the records indicate that Lisa has resigned." Ryan's mind went blank. Resigned? How? Where could she have gone? Before he could process the flood of questions, an email notification popped up on his phone. He opened it and froze. Divorce papers. His blood turned to ice. Lisa wanted a divorce. That couldn't be possible. He tried calling her, but the calls wouldn't go through. His hands shook as he summoned his secretary. Find Lisa. Track her down. The secretary worked quickly but eventually shook her head. Mr. Page. Ms. Thompson's records were deleted after she landed. We can't trace her. Ryan's phone slipped from his hand. He stared blankly, unable to comprehend what was happening. The office door burst open, and Ashley rushed in, her face pale. She threw herself into Ryan's arms, tears streaming down her face. Ryan, help me, she sobbed, her voice trembling. Several PR staff members followed her in, their faces panicked. Mr. Page, you need to see this. Ryan opened his phone. The internet was in chaos. Lisa's account had posted the full, unedited video from the hallway, along with their marriage certificate. In the video, Ashley's usually elegant demeanor was gone, replaced by venomous cruelty as she taunted Lisa. The comments section exploded. The truth is out. Ashley's true colors are showing. What a snake. She manipulated the video to mislead everyone. Ashley's the real homewrecker. Mr. Page, say something. Who's really your wife? Ashley's lips trembled as she looked up at Ryan, her eyes pleading. Ryan, you have to issue a statement. Say the marriage certificate is fake. The video's fabricated. Tell them I'm the one you love, the one you're going to marry. She showed him her phone, which was flooded with hate messages, just as Lisa's had been. They're all attacking me. I'm scared. Ryan, please, help me. The PR team chimed in urgently. Our stock is plummeting. If we don't act fast, the losses will be catastrophic. Mr. Page, do as Ashley says. We can still salvage this. But Ryan was lost, staring at the divorce papers in his inbox. No, he muttered, his voice hollow. Lisa loves me. She wouldn't leave me. Suddenly, he snapped out of his daze. His eyes darkened as he turned to Ashley, his hands gripping her shoulders. You, he growled, his voice low and dangerous. You've been hurting Lisa this whole time. How dare you think you could take her place? His hands moved to her throat, his fingers tightening. My wife is Lisa. Only Lisa. Ashley gasped for air, clawing at his hands, but he was too strong. The others in the room rushed to pull him off her. Ryan's eyes were bloodshot, his face twisted with rage. Get out, he snarled, his voice trembling with fury. You drove Lisa away, and now you expect me to help you. Ashley stumbled back, clutching her throat, her face white with fear. Ryan's voice was cold. Final. You're done here, and if I ever see you near me or Lisa again, you'll regret it. Ashley stumbled back, her fingers trembling as she touched the red marks on her neck. She shot Ryan one last terrified glance before bolting out of the office. Ryan, meanwhile, picked up his phone and posted a message from his official account. Lisa is my wife. Ashley means nothing to me. The internet exploded. People quickly dug up the incident where Ryan had forced Lisa to apologize to Ashley. Soon, the hashtag scumbag and homewrecker was trending, and Page Group's stock plummeted even further. But Ryan didn't care about the company or the stock. His only focus was finding Lisa. Meanwhile, in a small town nestled between mountains and rivers, life was peaceful. My mom and I had settled here, far from the chaos of the city. I opened a small convenience store, spending my days chatting with neighbors and selling everyday items. Mom, finally free from years of hardship, spent her time exploring the town and making new friends. In this quiet, stress-free environment, both of us began to heal. The weight of the past slowly lifted, and I found myself thinking about Ryan less and less. His presence in my heart faded until it disappeared completely. I realized I had finally let go. I adopted a cat and a dog, and our small home became cozy and warm, filled with little trinkets and potted plants. Lately, I developed a passion for growing succulents. One day, I walked into the local flower shop and noticed the owner had changed. The new owner was a young man, tall and full of youthful energy. He smiled as I entered, and when I asked him for tips on caring for succulents, he lit up. Don't water them too much, and make sure they get plenty of sunlight, he said enthusiastically. Succulents are hardy. I used to be a serial killer of plants and pets, birds, goldfish, ivy, morning glories. You name it. None of them lasted more than 2 weeks. But then I tried succulents. And somehow, I kept them alive. Now I'm obsessed with them. I laughed, imagining the scene. He stared at me, his ears turning bright red. What's wrong? I asked, amused. He hesitated, then mumbled, nothing. It's just, you have a really beautiful smile. His shyness was endearing, and I couldn't resist teasing him. I reached out, my fingers brushing his shoulder, aiming for his ear, but he turned his head suddenly, and my fingers grazed his lips instead. We both froze, the air between us charged with an unexpected tension. I mentally scolded myself. After 7 years of marriage, how could I still feel so flustered? His eyes were soft, almost pleading. I forced a smile and said, I have a cat and a dog. Maybe you could come over sometime and see them. His face lit up, and he quickly pulled out his phone to exchange contact information. I run the convenience store at the end of the street. I added, feel free to drop by anytime. He nodded eagerly, handing me a pot of pink succulents. These are for you. Take good care of them. As I stepped out of the flower shop, cradling the pot of succulents, I saw someone I never expected to see again. Ryan. He stood outside, looking disheveled and exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. It was clear he hadn't slept well in a long time. The transparent door of the flower shop had given him a full view of my conversation with Jack, and his face was pale with anger, or maybe something else. When our eyes met, his filled with tears. He quickly wiped them away, but they kept falling, as if he couldn't stop them. Lisa, he choked out, his voice trembling. I've been looking for you for so long. I finally found you. He hesitated, his gaze searching my face. How have you been? Are you doing okay? Then, almost cautiously, he asked, that guy in the shop, are you close with him? I looked at him, feeling nothing but calm. It was strange. I'd loved this man for 7 years, but now, he felt like a stranger. Ryan, I said evenly, I sent you the divorce papers. It's over. His body stiffened, and he began to shake. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything I did to you. It's all my fault. Please, don't look at me like that. I'm begging you. He kept apologizing, his voice desperate. But I cut him off coldly. We have no relationship anymore. You don't need to pretend to care. Just leave and don't come back to disrupt my life or my mom's. My words were firm, final. He looked utterly defeated, turning away with a broken expression. I thought that would be the end of it, but for the next 2 weeks, Ryan lingered in the shadows like a ghost, watching my life from afar. Every morning, a fresh bouquet of flowers appeared outside my store. No matter how many times I threw them away, they always returned the next day. His persistence grew increasingly frustrating. Finally, I came up with a plan. I asked Jack, the flower shop owner, to pretend to be my boyfriend, hoping it would make Ryan give up. Jack agreed without hesitation. For several days, we acted like a couple, our interactions warm and affectionate. It seemed to work. Ryan disappeared, and I breathed a sigh of relief. When I told Jack we could end the charade, he panicked. He grabbed my hands, his eyes searching mine. Lisa, after all this time together, do you really feel nothing for me? His vulnerability caught me off guard. Jack had been kind, attentive, and funny. His love was like a gentle river, quietly enveloping me and healing my heart. I decided to be honest with him, sharing my past and the scars it had left. If you can't accept my baggage, I said, we can go back to being friends. Jack was silent for a moment. Then tears filled his eyes. He pulled me into a gentle embrace. I'm so sorry for everything you've been through, he whispered. You're amazing. And you didn't deserve any of that pain. I'll stand by you, no matter what. His words melted the walls around my heart. That day, we officially became a couple. Even my mom approved of Jack. She often whispered to me, Jack is so much better than Ryan. Don't let this one go. I always smiled and nodded. As the days passed, my relationship with Jack grew stronger. But one day, I saw another familiar figure outside my store. Her once proud posture was now hunched, her hair streaked with gray. It was Ryan's mother. Her face was etched with pain, her voice hoarse as she began to speak. Through her words, I learned what had happened after I left. The posts I made and Ryan's statement had caused an uproar online, tarnishing both Ashley's and Ryan's reputations beyond repair. Ashley, who had hoped to leverage Ryan's influence and her past as a violinist to break into the entertainment industry, was now a pariah. She couldn't even step outside her door without fear. Desperate to escape the backlash, she tried to flee abroad, just as she had done before. But on her way, she encountered someone with a deep hatred for homewreckers. They threw acid at her, disfiguring her face and destroying her hands. Her career as a violinist was over. As for Ryan, after I left, he spiraled into despair. He turned the city upside down, searching for any trace of me. But his obsession cost him everything. Page Group's stock plummeted to rock bottom. Employees and shareholders, seeing Ryan's erratic behavior, abandoned ship. Eventually, the company declared bankruptcy. He came looking for you, didn't he? Mia's voice broke as she spoke, tears streaming down her face. He was found unconscious and taken to the hospital. They diagnosed him with stomach cancer. He can't even get out of bed now. He's given up on treatment. His last wish is to see you. Please, will you go to him? Mia's knees buckled, and she collapsed to the ground. Her face was a mask of regret and pain, her tears mixing with the dirt on her hands. The once proud woman was now a broken shadow of her former self. I was wrong, she sobbed. I thought you weren't good enough for him. But I was the one who didn't see your worth. If you're angry, be angry at me. Just, please, see him one last time. I can't let him die with this regret. But I felt nothing. Those 7 years with Ryan felt like a distant dream, now scattered like smoke. The people and events of that time held no meaning for me anymore. My focus was on my mom, my love, and the future I was building. Mia knelt there, her eyes pleading, refusing to get up. But I didn't say a word. Instead, I reached for Jack's hand. Intertwining our fingers tightly, Mia understood. Her mouth opened as if to say more, but I closed the door before she could. She left, her back hunched, looking a decade older than when she'd arrived. My story with Ryan was over, but my story with Jack, it was just beginning.